Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, David Westcott. And this morning I have with me special guest, Bill Kessler. Bill is a graduate from UW and he did his law degree at Willamette. He's a partner at Beresford and Booth. Bill Kessler helps businesses, individuals, and families reach their goals by providing timely, thorough representation. He understands and facilitates each client's big picture objectives and efficiently integrates his role in achieving those objectives. Bill has litigated superior court cases all around Washington and cases in the United States District Courts for the Western District of Washington and Eastern District of Washington. He also argued cases to the Washington Court of Appeals, and he has been admitted to the Pro Hoc Vice to several federal and state courts around the United States. Bill conducts a range of business and real estate transactions, including entity formation, partnership, shareholder agreements, commercial lease transactions, and purchase and sale of real estate business assets and entity interest. Bill has practiced at Beresford and Booth his entire legal career. He has been a partner in the firm since 2016. Bill is dedicated to helping local charities. He has served on the board of directors for the Snow King Youth Club for over 14 years. He also serves on the board of directors for the Husky Rugby Alumni Association, as well as the Ryan Job Memorial Rugby Scholarship. Bill enjoys traveling, hiking, and spending time with his family. That's one heck of an intro, Bill. I feel like I was just introduced. I feel like Michael Buffer right now. That was fabulous. Pro Hoc Vice. Did I get that right?
Vice. Yeah, Pro Hoc Vice.
Oh, Pro Hoc Vice. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get to argue litigation cases in other places where you're not licensed, so long as somebody will stand up and vouch for you.
Okay. Yeah. And so somebody has stood up and vouched for you.
I know. Yeah, right. And I don't know what that says about them.
Next time what we got to do is we got to phonetically spell that.
Yeah,
I read through these before to make sure that I pronounce every word correctly. But what happens is sometimes you get into the middle of one of these and it's like, do I skip that word or do I just keep moving?
Stinking Latin, you know?
Stinking Latin. As you can tell, I'm not a Latin graduate. Well, good morning. Thank you for joining the call.
Thanks for having me.
I think that this is one of the most important things for any entrepreneur, any business owner, any founder, any CEO. I believe that no matter what size your business is, whether you're just starting out as a simple entity and you're trying to get going, is having good legal representation. I believe that having that legal support is so much better than what you get on like a legal Zoom or like going on legal Zoom and filling out your LLC yourself for, $200 or $700, whatever it is. That legal representation really helps you avoid pitfalls that can be costly in business. What have you found in your 20-year career working with businesses, working with entrepreneurs? What are some of the pitfalls and things that they're running into that could have been avoided had they had proper legal support?
Sure. Yeah. Well, when you start off in business, I mean, it's kind of if you have a good lawyer who will help you womb to tomb and know when to bring in other counsel and when not to, that's a crucial thing. So starting off in the formation of the business. It's important to have. You alluded to it. Trying to form your own business. I call that self-surgery, or doing a lot of the contract work involved in properly navigating business relationships. I call that self-surgery. Don't do it. You don't take out your own appendix. You don't do your own legal work. So it starts with the formation, having a properly drafted entity, whether that's a corporation or an LLC or an LLP or whatever you're going to do. You have to have proper contracts. Even if it's just you alone, even if it's a single member LLC, it's got to be a properly drafted agreement between you and that LLC to make sure that the LLC provides you maximum protection, long story short, and to be sure that everything else is set up the right way in the formation of the entity. A single member LLC is about the simplest example there can be, but it still needs to be done the right way. And then you take the next steps, you add other members to the LLC and other investors, other owners, other shareholders, and you have to have the right kind of contract between those people. So that's a first pitfall, is trying to set up your own business and not doing it properly and getting off on the wrong foot.
You mentioned something about partners, and I think that this is one of the things that I've noticed over my business career is that, some partnerships work. I'll say that, but what I've seen is that the majority of people that I've known who have gone into a partnership, they go in with the best intentions, they have the great ideas, but in the time that I've been in business, those are the businesses that I've seen fall apart the most, where there's just a disagreement between owners, there's a disagreement between shareholders, they can't reconcile that difference. I mean, I don't know what it is. 50% of marriages end in divorce. Do you think that two people forming a business together are going to end happy? A lot of that is really able to be sorted out with proper legal representation from the beginning. You're able to put your name in your book and say, this is mine, this is what I get, this is what happens if we decide to break up. Right? Is that how that works?
Yeah, you make a really good point. A lot of people, when they have a partner, they think that the purpose of the contract is to plan for if things go badly, and they're getting along famously, and they have dollar signs in their eyes, and rightfully so. Probably a lot of good ideas and a lot of good intentions at the outset of the partnership. But that's not really the purpose of the contract. It's not the sole purpose of the contract to plan if things go badly. One really great aspect of a partnership agreement, whether that's a shareholder agreement or an LLC agreement, however you want to style it, is facing into the issues that you haven't really thought about in your head as a new business owner, or even if you're not a new business owner, as someone who newly has a partner. And so you're going to be facing into these issues and crystallizing them. So I think a lot of savvy business people have as kind of an amorphous view of these issues, like what happens when we're going to contribute. Are we going to be able to contribute capital? Are we going to be able to force each other to contribute additional capital into the business? If we have a disagreement in the management of the company, how are we going to resolve that? What if we have I have a desire to bring in a new partner and give equity, even if it's some of my own equity and not any of yours, but you don't want that new partner to come in. Are we going to require unanimity in that? And then what happens if we have, in the LLC context, you call it an involuntary withdrawal, a death, a disability, a divorce, a bankruptcy, individual bankruptcy, that is. What happens in that context? So you face into these things in drafting the agreement, and the benefit there is, again, you're crystallizing that partnership relationship, and you're addressing those issues. So the benefit is in just the drafting of the agreement and forcing the conversation with your partner about these things that were not previously crystallized. So not just for the back end when things go bad, but the front end, so you get off on the right foot to start with.
That is such good advice. What I hear a lot of what you're saying is that you're kind of preparing for blind spots.
Right.
There's blind spots that you're not seeing on day one. Like, I think, all business owners go into business with this intention to solve a problem, provide a service, and make money to, pay for the life that they want to have. They want this idea of freedom. And the truth of the matter is that when you go in, there's so many things that you don't know. There's just, there is a plethora of just things that are going to hit you head on, and having those counselors, having those people to help guide you through these tough times is really paramount. You mentioned one thing, that advising you on legal support outside of the realm of legal representation that you provide. You didn't say it in those words, but I think back to when, I was having a legal battle with like PF Chang's, right? And this is a big company, and I'm a little company, and I'm going up against them. And I'm like, hey, Bill, what are we going to do? They're not paying the bill. And, what's going to happen here? And, part of that really great, thing that you guys provide was, hey, listen, I know a great law firm. They're down in Arizona. They're going to help you out. Let me make an introduction. And I thought that's one of the huge benefits that I found as I grow my business. It didn't matter where the legal battle was. And we've had several of them over the years outside of Washington, where your firm, you specifically, have been able to recommend an attorney to help us fight a specific battle. And I would say that in every one of those instances, I can't think of one where it didn't work out very favorably. And I think that's really huge, because if I'm going into battle, or if I've got this thing that I've got to come up against, knowing that I'm not just picking up the phone book and I'm trying to vet lawyers and I'm trying to figure out who am I going to call, and are they going to do a good job, and is the rate they're charging fair, and they charge more than this, and because the legal bills, they do rack up quickly sometimes, and so you want to make sure. And that's the other thing, is these legal battles are going to cost you way more than you think.
Yeah.
Right. And so really having that that legal representation in your corner helps you out along the way. Talk to us a little bit about what the legal services entail. Like, if we come to work together, it's not just the LLC, it's not just the formation. What other things are we able to benefit from, like this story of helping with counsel from a different office?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and our firm is, I think, as you know, is a member of an international law society of law firms focused in the U.S. but around the world. And a lot of large law firms have the benefit of being able to refer to other offices of their same law firm around the country. But when you have a medium-sized law firm, you've got to go out and seek that organization. And luckily that exists for us. An organization called Primaris. And so I was able to refer you confidently and easily. And in Arizona, for example, I just got back from visiting those guys with my partner and our families. And in July, they had or in January last month, they had a conference down there.
Wow.
In Phoenix, and good times and beautiful weather. So yeah.
Building networks.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, if you have what I try to be for my clients is general counsel. So I can litigate their cases specifically. Our firm can litigate their cases. Our firm can handle their transactional work as well. But to be general counsel for an entrepreneur involves looking at their whole picture holistically. And I think in my bio it says I try to integrate my role, and I do. I have a role, and I need to know what that role is, and that's to provide sound, independent legal judgment and legal advice. So that's what I try to be for those entrepreneur clients. Is I need to start at 35,000 feet. I need to have their big picture in mind at all times. I'm not just focusing on a single isolated legal problem in a vacuum. I'm keeping their entire business picture in mind and helping them make a business decision, because for entrepreneurs, legal opportunities and legal problems are all just business decisions for them. Trying to help them stay dispassionate and make those business decisions is a huge piece.
I love that you mentioned business decisions. I think so. When I started my business, I was with Beersford and Booth, and Bill was like my first lawyer. So I was starting out, and he was starting out roughly around the same time.
That's right.
And so we got connected kind of early on. And one of the things that I remember from getting started early on was, one, I mean, I didn't know anything about anything, but at the end of the day, it was, I would call and I might be quite emotional about some issue that was happening. Why are they doing this? And I remember you saying, I'll never forget it. It's, Dave, it's about making the best business decision. And sometimes the best business decision means just let it go and pay. Sometimes it means fighting, but it's about what's the best business decision for your business. As a small business owner, that's one of the things I needed to hear. And I've actually carried that with me for 20 years. Because it's real easy to get emotional and it's like, this isn't fair. Wait, we got to take fairness out of it. We got to take these things out of what's happening. And the first time you get served legal papers, or the first time somebody sues you, or the first time something like that happens, you think, isn't my insurance company just going to point me to a lawyer?
Yeah.
Why should I connect with a litigator? Why should I do this? What's going to happen when I get sued? And I think business decisions and lawsuits go hand in hand. Talk to us a little bit about how you see that playing out for the entrepreneur.
Sure. Well, obviously every entrepreneur wants to avoid litigation.
I haven't done a good job of that.
Thanks. But you want to avoid litigation, and there's a lot of circumstances in which paying up and making the business decision or whatever it is, something that's emotionally distasteful, might be the right business decision, and other times when it's the wrong one, and it's time to bow up and fight. A good lawyer, what I try to do is advise that client from a business perspective about first of all, whether the litigation is advisable. And that's if you're going to be a plaintiff. It doesn't matter whether it's advisable if you're the defendant. You're defending, and you're in a piece of litigation whether you want to, or not. That's right. And then it's definitely not covered by insurance if it's a contract dispute, for example. So, bringing competent, business-minded representation and tough-minded and aggressive representation to a defense or a piece of plaintiff's work is paramount. But keeping that business decision squarely in mind, and keeping the client's big picture business goals and objectives in mind for the lawyer is paramount throughout as well.
It's true. It's funny. I don't know that, I've got into my own litigation issues just because of the business that I'm in.
Yep.
I'm in the construction business, and there is a lot of litigation around that.
Yep.
I would say it's one of the most, I don't know if it's the most for sure, because I don't know other things, but I know that construction is heavily litigated, from construction defect to subcontractors to, contract management, all the way to performance bonds. There's all sorts of things that you get into. If somebody would have told me, Dave, you're going to be in a constant state of litigation for the next 20 years, I don't know that I would have got into the construction business.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people that, get into business and they never have a lawsuit.
Right.
They never have a legal battle. This isn't one of the things that we had planned to talk about, but what do you think it is that separates the company that's always in a constant state of litigation versus the company that never has a legal battle? Is there a key differentiator there?
That's interesting. I get very much depends on the company and the industry, but you talk about construction. In general, when the dollars get big enough, it starts kind of getting back to the topic of the business decision. When the dollars get big enough, sometimes litigation for either side just becomes the right business decision. You go, all right, we've got a disagreement about something. If you and I have a disagreement over 40 grand, well, okay, let's figure that out. But if you and I have a disagreement over 40 million, well, then proportionately the lawyers aren't that expensive.
Right.
Yeah, like we're a bad business decision at 40 grand. At 40 million, there's no business decision. It's just, it doesn't matter what the lawyers cost, or
Right.
and 40 is too big of a number. I don't mean to say that it's got to be that. At 4 million, it's a no-brainer business decision. If there's a disagreement that the parties don't quickly come to.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's no way to exert leverage in a negotiation. If the handshake and the good relationship isn't going to carry the day, if you have a 6 or 7 figure dispute, high sixes or 7 figure or more dispute, then it's just a good business decision to exert the pressure of litigation to achieve your objective. Because without litigation, your leverage is far smaller.
So what you're saying is that, if you've got a matter that's sitting around $40,000, it's probably not the best business decision to go guns blazing.
Yeah, generally, unless you're trying to make a point or reputationally, you want to advertise the fact that so that everyone knows that you're not going to take anything sitting down or something like that. But from just a pure isolated business decision, certainly you don't want to be litigating over, I'm picking that number, say 30 or 40 or 50 grand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally kind of keep the benchmark of about 30K in my head. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I sit at, but up to 52, because like you're thinking about, one of the things that I learned was that I was sitting in a small claims action, and the judge comes in and he says, every single person who thinks they're going to win today, raise their hand. And everybody raises their hand.
Sure.
And he says, guess what? 50% of you are going to lose. And
now go settle, right?
That's right. Like, that's what he says. Yeah, now go settle, But the truth of the matter is that what I've learned is that even if you think your case is bulletproof and amazing and you think that you're right, a lot of times there's holes in there. It's kind of like Swiss cheese,
Yeah.
You might be missing a few things, or you might not be good under pressure in a deposition. You might not tell your story correctly. You might, miss facts. Like, going into the arena of the legal battle it's a business decision, like you said, but it's got a high risk to it, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Even with the best cases laid out, you can go in for a summary judgment motion and you can think, we got this thing licked, and then, the judge can rule against it, or it can, I might be speaking out of turns in how it actually happens, but it can be kind of disappointing, and then you've got to go back and you've got to say, hey, we got to pony up more money.
Yeah.
And when you're in, you can't just quit.
Right.
When you're in, you're in.
Yep. Very true.
What separates an excellent lawyer from an okay lawyer?
Well, you have to be, I'll use the context of litigation. You have to be good at what you do. First of all, you have to be able to go, you have to be able to go win as if money's not an object. You have to be able to do that. Go win as if money's not an object. Now, then from there, once you have that skill set and you have the ability to win, then you can back off of that and again, kind of what I touched on before, help the client make business decisions. So you don't go in guns blazing because you go into a small claims trial and you haven't spent any money on a lawyer, or you've consulted with one for a couple hours and it's not very expensive. But by the time you get to trial in Superior Court, typically you've spent well north of six figures.
North of six figures,
right? Or not north of, but north of 100,000, and maybe maybe $500,000, depending on the size of the case, or even more. So you can have a very expensive piece of litigation by the time you get to trial. But litigation doesn't go from filing to trial. And so when I talk about exerting leverage, you exert leverage simply by filing the complaint at the beginning which is what you do at the beginning of the lawsuit. You file the complaint, and there's a lot of time between filing the complaint and going to trial. So in the interim, you're exerting that leverage, because the economic pain of litigation doesn't come all at one time. It kind of builds, and especially as you get to trial, it really builds. Yeah. So just the economic realities for both sides of litigation, it's kind of this curve that it keeps ramping up as you go. There's bumps and ups and downs in the middle economically, but it gets really expensive toward the end. So that all just kind of goes into the calculus.
What I've kind of found is that, the complaint is kind of that jarring action. That's just kind of, it's a shot across the bow, if you will. Mm-hmm. And then you've either got things like summary judgments and depositions. And I feel like the excellent lawyers win at the deposition. Mm-hmm. This has been my kind of what I've seen, is that when and a deposition, just if you don't know, it's in my layman terms, it's when your attorney is basically interviewing and asking questions of the opposing party
under oath without restriction,
right? They can object and so on and so forth, but you're kind of just getting the feel for what's going on. And what I feel like is an excellent lawyer, a super lawyer, they're able to really just dive in and tear that opponent apart in the deposition. And then if it's good enough and they get good enough information, they can then move for summary judgment, which ends this thing fast, which is what I always want. On my side, I always want to end it fast. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? How have I broken that down? Does that jive with what you see and think?
Yeah, it does, with the caveat that before a deposition, so you're in the discovery phase of litigation, and discovery traditionally involves extracting documents from the other side first, before the deposition. So there's a lot of ordering the other side and third parties to turn over documents. So through subpoenas, interrogatories, requests for production, answer written questions, and turn over documents. And if you, that's the expensive part of litigation, it's extracting those documents and then conducting the deposition. So that's your traditional discovery. And lawsuits kind of typically, and let's use construction, they kind of go two ways. First, you've exerted that leverage at the complaint phase. You've started the lawsuit. Both sides are assured, if they go to the discovery phase, of spending a lot of money. So maybe you're able to settle early before both sides spend money in discovery. But once somebody isn't going to settle and you head toward discovery, you go, okay, we're both going to spend a few bucks here now. So once you get into discovery, right, you get those docs, and so ideally for a deposition, you've got a stack of documents that you're going to walk through and ask questions about for each one. So it's really not about, most of the time, about finding out information from the other side. It's about pinning them into the story that you, the lawyer, know is your story. This is the documents tell the story. Yeah. And you pin them into that story with the documents, ideally.
I love that. You put that very, very brilliantly. I love the way that you articulate that. So we've known each other a long time. And, one of the things I think is I love about this show is just being vulnerable, helping entrepreneurs grow their business. entrepreneurship, I don't care if it's a fruit smoothie stand, a landscaping business, it's just tough.
Yeah.
There's just tough stuff.
You better believe it.
You've known me a long time. We've known each other a long time. And because you're my lawyer, you know a lot about me, which not everybody might know. So there you go.
Fair to say.
What's one piece of advice you would go back and say, hey, Dave, you could have done this better? Or Dave, this was a miss. This was a step you could have taken a little bit better along the 20-year journey. If you can think of any, maybe there's nothing, I don't know. But I always like to just get vulnerable and, be real with the audience and share real things that can really help guys grow.
Well, I mean, so Dave's story, the folks that out there, I'll be brief, but you might know Dave's story, but it's a wonderful one. And I started representing Dave. I bet I was 28 and Dave was probably 25, I'd say. How old are you?
43.
Okay, yeah, so you're 2 years younger than me. So you're probably 26, and you had your landscaping company, and what did you have? 4 or 5 employees, maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
If that, yeah. And that's how we started, and so Dave's rise since then has been something to see, and his education, and his willingness to learn, your willingness to learn and ask questions like this, like you are right now. A lot of people aren't willing to learn and don't want to sort of take what they learn and then get better with it. So the fact you're asking the question is a good thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. But shoot, gosh, I mean, I go back, I don't know how many different separate matters I had. I actually do know. I think it's 41. 41 matters. I think you and I have had that many separate matters, and so I say that to say, and some of those are transactional, and some of those are litigation, and
Sure.
right, so they're all over the place. But gosh, I mean, we could go back through each one, and there's probably a lesson for both of us in each separate matter we've ever had together. So trying to pin down, but I guess one mistake that you probably made early that you probably make less now is that learning and making that business decision, which you're sort of relentlessly focused on the business decision now, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, based on your success, you're obviously relentlessly focused on that because you don't do all of this without that. So probably an early mistake that you made was probably not focusing on that business decision all the time, and now here you are absolutely doing it. So
I can get a little carried away with my when the F-bombs start coming, it's not a good moment. But one of the things I think that as I kind of look back is that I really wish I would have done better at as an entrepreneur is I wish I would have been more disciplined at the critical moments. And like, I'll just give you an example of some, like, in business, man, we need to sell jobs. Like, sales is the heart of any business.
yes.
And so I would be so excited to get a job that I would say, okay, here's the proposal. All right, it's good. And, they would come back and they would send me an email back and they might say, okay, we approve this job to move forward. And so then I would just move forward and I wouldn't necessarily have them sign the piece of paper and I wouldn't, file the pre-lien notice because I didn't want to risk the sale. I was so scared to risk the sale that I compromised on doing things right. Like, I was so scared to have them sign the piece of paper like they would, like for some reason they wouldn't want to do the job. Mm-hmm. That was a big miss. And then, even with subcontractors, not making the staff like toe the line with get every agreement signed, get every W-9, get every COI, those were some of my early misses. And I chalk it up to just discipline. It's more important to be disciplined with the business than it is to just get the work. Because if you get the work, it can fall apart.
That's right.
And just because you go into it with everybody has their best intentions in mind, not everybody has the best intentions in mind. And so those were some of the things that I really learned early on. And like, I think those things, one of the things that you mentioned was at the beginning of the episode was have a contract in place. Stick to that contract. Make sure you get that contract signed. I mean, in your mind, how important is that contract signature? How important is laying out the terms that we're going to play this game by?
Yeah, it's similar to a partnership agreement. The benefit of that contract, again, isn't just to just in the event that things go south, but the benefit of that, say in your world, a customer agreement, is to lay out the terms so that everyone is clear, and things that people are thinking of in a fuzzy, amorphous way, they crystallize that thinking, whether it's a customer vendor relationship or a partner relationship. And now with that, I'll use the example of a customer agreement. Now you've addressed these issues in a specific way, so that at the outset, when that contract is signed, the main benefit of that contract is the comfort that it gives both sides and the clarity that it gives both sides going into the front end of a job in this case.
I like that. It's the comfort of who's doing what roles are we, you're really laying out the terms of who's doing what. And essentially what we're saying is, I'm going to deliver this work and you're going to pay me this money.
That's right.
That's what we're trying to get to.
Yep.
And we're laying out the terms in which we play the game. We would never play Monopoly and say, well, Bill, you don't get to collect $200 when you pass go.
Right.
You'd be like, hey man, I'm not playing with you. You're a cheater, Yeah. And I think that helps us to build that out. Well, this has been an awesome podcast. As we bring this thing in for a landing, what's one piece of advice that you would leave with any entrepreneur today?
Well, I'll do a self-serving one. Have a good general counsel.
Yeah.
Have a lawyer who will advise you from a holistic standpoint, who understands your business, not the details of I can't understand your business the way you do. I don't mean it like that, but to understand at least the broad strokes of it, and who's going to keep your best interest, your big picture business best interest in mind, and not too narrowly focus on each individual business decision until it's time. It's time to narrow in and win that lawsuit. Until it's time to narrow in and draft that contract. To do that when necessary and when the work comes up, but to always have that client, that entrepreneurial client's best big picture interest in mind, and to also advise. I mean, I advise my clients not just on legal matters, but I'm a counselor, a lowercase c counselor,
right.
And so I will talk to people. I'll talk to people about their marriage, and I'll talk to them about their business partners, and I'll talk to them about their health. And I mean, that's my business. I have to be able to do that. So I think I've tried to be more and more like that, and to be a holistic counselor for my clients. And I think that a good lawyer for an entrepreneur, especially for an entrepreneur, does that for that client. It's not a transactional relationship. It's a real relationship. I love that.
I think that's so true. Understanding who your clients are, understanding them, but it's also being that ear, right? And listening and advising. And sometimes in entrepreneurship, I think you bring up a great point. Like, as an owner, sometimes there is no one to talk to. Sometimes you can't come home and tell the wife, like, oh man, if I don't get this deal, we're filing bankruptcy. Sometimes you can't do that. You can't tell the kids. Sometimes you don't have a friend that you can talk to.
Absolutely.
And sometimes bankruptcy is not the option. Sometimes you just need, well, have you thought about this?
Correct.
So I think that's awesome. I think in my life as an entrepreneur or not an entrepreneur, I think there's three connections that are absolutely critical to your success. I believe one is having a great lawyer You've got to have that in your corner, a general counsel. 2 is have a great CPA. And
Absolutely.
3, have a great wealth manager that can help you understand how to move your money. I think those are the 3 best things anybody can have. Bill, this has been a fantastic episode. I know that our viewership has gleaned tons of awesome points out of this. Listen, if you're looking for legal representation today, and you're, in Washington or even outside of Washington, reach out to Bill, Beersford and Booth. Check them out. They're a fantastic law firm located in Edmonds, Washington. They have done a fabulous job for me for 20 years, just like when we started talking and I was doing $70,000 a year with 2 or 3 people or 4 people. Some of those tips and tricks and conversations stick with me still to this day. So if you're looking to take your business to the next level, if you're looking to build that really amazing, powerful, wonderful business that you dream of, do the first thing, do the best thing, and get yourself with a law firm, and check out Beersford and Booth. They're absolutely fantastic, absolutely amazing lawyers. And I've worked with many other lawyers in the law firm and have had a great experience with them and have referred many friends and family to Beersford and Booth. So do yourself a favor, check them out. Thank you very much for joining our show. We'll be back next week, 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere we're at social. And Bill's on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah,
I see you hanging out there as well.
Absolutely.
So hit Bill up on LinkedIn. He's there hanging out. And thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.